I just learned about something extraordinary, a situation from 1997 that somehow I was unaware of. And I look back at my life of 5 hours ago in disgust that I could be so ignorant to not know about this. I watched a video covering this and then watched the raw footage of the situation, and I'm confident this is footage I will never forget. The Men in Black couldn't neuralize this information out of my brain. A YouTuber named Sir W made a video about a guy wielding a sword holding off 50 cops. And on stream the other night, chat told me about it, and it piqued my interest, but I didn't watch it until today. And since finishing that video, I've embarked on a personal quest to learn everything there is to know about the Seattle samurai, Tony Allison. Unfortunately, all the information has been lost to time, or perhaps it's a little more dubious than that, maybe a government cover-up to keep it under wraps because he was too powerful with the katana. I don't really know, but unfortunately, I don't have many results to showcase for my hours worth of trying to deep dive. But I still wanted to talk about this story and show you Sir W's video, as well as the raw footage of the police standoff with the Seattle samurai.
With nothing but sunglasses and a samurai sword to his name, this man held off an army of police officers for 11 hours and just stood there. His name is Tony Allison, but on this day, he insisted that everybody, including the police, refer to him as Apollo, and it all started with him doing nothing. Yeah.
April 3rd, 1997, a date that Seattle still bears the scars from. A date that is etched into the tablets of time, never to be forgotten. Except by pretty much everybody, it seems. Sir W, the YouTuber here, even mentions how surprised he was that no one else had covered this story, and I am equally as surprised now after having learned it. It is outrageous. So, it was just a normal, peaceful afternoon in Seattle, and then we witnessed the birth of the last true samurai, Tony Allison, who was walking around brandishing his trusty blade, and some of the civilians were a bit disturbed by it, weirded out. You know, why is he walking around with a sword? Eventually an off-duty officer followed him around because he found it to be odd as well.
Now, Apollo was suspicious of this guy following him, and rightfully so. I would be as well. So he took what the cop describes as a defensive stance with his sword at the ready, which is understandable in a defense situation like this one. But sadly, that was enough for the off-duty cop to call his buddies, and they would remain in that same location for the next 11 hours.
As quite a few of the YouTube comments point out, this entire situation is the very definition of he's just standing there menacingly. At no point does Apollo ever use his blade, he doesn't swing it, he doesn't get aggressive or show any signs of trying to draw blood, he's not trying to carve flesh from bone or anything. He's keeping his Bushido arts under wrap. He doesn't unleash his Bankai or anything. He just sits there wielding the blade for 11 fucking hours, and he is striking some mean power stances. Like, he is looking like an anime character. It looks like a video game idle animation from a lot of the footage I've seen here. For 11 hours, as like 50 officers surround him and try and talk with him. Now, his name is Tony Allison, but he wanted to be called Apollo. He didn't really communicate with the authorities, aside from a couple of sentences that he said that were apparently pretty cryptic, but one of the things that he requested was that they refer to him as Apollo, which is a pretty badass name. Almost as badass as Gamer Sups, the best beverage ever invented. We all know this. Everyone in the world knows Gamer Sups is the best fluid that has ever graced this planet. And I'm happy to announce their newest product, Gamer Soups, which is just good ramen. For the last month or so, all 8 of us at the warehouse have eaten this for breakfast and lunch pretty much every day, so I can confirm that full-grown adults can survive on a diet consisting solely of Gamer Soups. It's really just that simple, no misleading marketing mumbo-jumbo about this being some super healthy alternative, turbo food that's going to be better for your body than broccoli or anything. It's just good fucking ramen. So Gamer Soups is live right now. I'll put a link to everything in the description. You can follow their Twitter, follow their Instagram, or get yourself some Gamer Soup of your own. Big thanks to them for sponsoring.
Seattle, Washington. An explosive standoff begins when a man brandishes a samurai sword on a downtown sidewalk. A friend of the man confirms authorities' worst fears.
Yeah, he knows how to use the sword.
Everyone's worst nightmare has just come true. just like Roronoa Zoro, it turns out Tony Allison is aiming to be the best swordsman in the world, I guess. I don't know. They said that this guy is a friend of Tony's and that apparently he knows how to use the blade. I don't know if he's necessarily an expert or anything on the matter, or if Tony, like, does, you know, performances with the sword or something. I don't know how he would know. Like, I feel like if you're studying the blade, you're not exactly showcasing your abilities to others. You want to keep it a secret in case shit gets hairy, right? You don't want to reveal your techniques to potential opponents. So I feel like when he was interviewed and asked, does he know how to use the sword? He's like, yeah, fuck yeah. I'm sure he does, probably. And to be fair, I feel like if you have a sword, it's kind of intuitive. You swing it a lot, and maybe you thrust and stab it a bit.
Everybody on! Police quickly cordon off the block.
Everybody on the curb! Over there!
A SWAT team arrives and surrounds the man. They begin talking to the suspect, trying to persuade him to drop his weapon.
They got the whole force out here like they're trying to apprehend Cobra Commander. I'm assuming there was no other crime going on in Seattle because they got the entire department to come down here for a fucking field trip. Maybe crime stood still, like, for this entire day just watching the Seattle Samurais standoff. I don't really know. But it's a huge response. And they're trying to talk to him, but like I said, he wasn't in a very talkative mood, aside from letting them know that he wants to be called Apollo. Now, according to Sir W's video, they tried to bribe him. I'll go ahead and play this section for you.
Got there, apparently they tried to bribe the samurai sword out of his hand with a glorious sum of $50. I want you to take one look at this guy and guess how he responded. However, the police did not give up here. Nah, they went back to the drawing board and came up with another offer. No, I can't make this. Offered him a Big Mac. No, I'm serious. This is real. They offered him McDonald's. This is targeted. Then they assumed since he was unmoved by this, he must have a mental health history. So they tried triggering schizophrenic urges. Of course, he was unmoved by these childish tricks and continued to stand his ground. So
now, from all the research I've done, and keep in mind, there's only so much available. I guess a lot of information may have been lost in the Library of Alexandria on this case. God only knows where all of this has vanished. I feel like this is something that media would have loved to do a little more digging on, but perhaps not. From everything I was able to cobble together, I can find no official sources from like the old newspapers or old articles written about it that confirm whether or not they tried to bribe him with $50 and a Big Mac. Sir W mentioned two of his main sources, and this information appears on this one, where it says that they offered him $50 for his sword, he ignored their bribe, they tempted him with a Big Mac, he held fast. But this site was making a joke out of the situation. Like, this post is clearly just playing around with it. It's not like 100% serious, though the situation is real. This isn't just like a factual, play-by-play of what was really going on. So I feel like there's potential that this was just slid in here as a joke. Just a little bit of baloney, some fucking dirty barnacles to spice it up and make it a little wackier and not real. Because this appears nowhere else. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. It's potential that they did try that. Just to me, it sounds a little far-fetched and unbelievable. I just can't imagine one of them going on the horn being like, "Hey, bud, drop the sword and we'll give you $50 and this Big Mac that Bill was going to give to his kids after the shift today." Like, it just doesn't seem like something they'd really try. But who knows? Again, this whole thing is already ridiculous, so it's possible.
He also said that he was possessed by demons and wanted to kill them.
He talked about Satan. He talked about his brothers in Russia and China, but he never really engaged the negotiator.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead here. It turns out that Tony Allison suffered from schizophrenia and manic depression and had previously spent 10 years in a mental hospital and even had a previous criminal charge of second-degree assault with intent to rape. So he's not exactly in his right mind, as you might imagine based on what you're seeing here.
But the suspect is unresponsive.
Never once did this individual talk to us. On occasion, he would shout out some things about Apollo and Satan and things like that, but we never were able to establish any sort of a conversation with him at all.
As Commissioner Gordon states there, they couldn't really communicate with him aside from, again, the mentions of Apollo, and he also talked about his brothers at some point, as well as, like, Satan. So it was very much a mental health crisis moment, which is why I think this lasted so long, because authorities really didn't know how to handle something like this, especially back then. I feel like they were even more in the dark on what to do in a situation like this. So they spent a long time in just a complete standstill for 11 hours, trying to talk to him, trying to get him to drop the sword and reason with him, to no avail. So then they started to brainstorm some more aggressive ideas.
They load their guns with special bean bags that strike with the same impact as a heavyweight boxer's punch. They're designed to halt, but not harm suspects. Unable to convince him to stop, police fire the bean bags. The suspect retreats, but he endures round after round and shows no sign of surrender.
Have you ever seen anyone this resilient?
An immovable force. What a titan. I almost feel bad for the beanbags that struck his body. They probably just fucking exploded on impact, just vaporized. I tell you, the katana he's wielding is not the only thing made out of steel there. His body is also made out of steel, forged just as powerfully as that blade he uses. But he did retreat. He didn't necessarily like getting hit with the beanbags.
As night falls, the man still refuses to relinquish his razor-sharp sword. 8 hours have passed, and police must try to disarm him another way. But the man shakes off the tear gas with almost superhuman strength, never releasing his weapon.
They tried to tear gas him, which he just shook off with ease. He looks mildly uncomfortable with the tear gas. It actually is like borderline superhuman.
The SWAT team has one final option: use fire hoses to remove his sword. In a highly orchestrated maneuver, police pin the suspect down with a ladder, pole, and riot shield.
And that's how the last samurai was defeated. An 11-hour stand. As the YouTube comments also pointed out, very few samurai throughout history can ever claim that they held off an army for 11 hours alone on the battlefield. So a very impressive feat. The fire hoses knocked him down, and then they said that they did a textbook maneuver, claiming that what they did next was by the books, like really, standard procedure pretty much, where they pinned him with a ladder and a pole and a riot shield. To me, that doesn't really seem like something they practice. That's probably not in any SWAT training textbooks, I would imagine. Of course, I'm not SWAT trained, but that just seemed like they started to improvise. Like when he fell, they're like, all right, what do we got? Give me that ladder, grab that broomstick, and then your riot shield, just sit on top of him. All right, go. And then they did, and it happened to work. So after this, he was once again put in another hospital, from what I've read, and he hasn't been seen since. Except Sir W actually did a bit of super sleuthing of his own and may have found evidence that the Seattle Samurai is still out there.
2021, a dad was with his son at Bitter Lake Playfield, and while passing by a homeless encampment, spotted this distinct shiny object sticking out of the debris. Now, the location of this park happens to be about 50 miles away from Western State Hospital, or a mere 8.2 miles away from where this whole thing began.
That's one of those stunning moments in a movie where the audience just goes, like a huge gasp. What a great find from Sir W there, because that does look like the same blade that he was wielding, and it's pretty close to where this standoff happened. And it's also such a cinematic conclusion. It actually looks like the end to a Dark Souls game. After you beat the final boss and the final cutscene's playing, and then it's just like your plus 10 moon veil stuck into the ground there. Like, that's what that whole scene played out like. Now, of course, it's not really a happy ending, because it seems, if this really is him, that he is still homeless and must not have gotten the help that he needed, which is extremely sad. Really, the whole situation is very sad, but it's one of those odd things that I can't believe actually happened, and even more peculiar is that nobody has ever really talked about it. So yeah, big thanks to Sir W for shining a light on this story. It was a pretty fascinating one. That's about it. See ya.